Chapter 7, Getting Sober the Hard Way. It's early Tuesday morning, and the dust-covered Raw Deal tour bus pulls into the empty In-N-Out parking lot on Sunset and Highland. The driver opens the bus door and steps outside. Inside, the bus smells of booze and cigarettes, and the members of the band are still asleep in their bunks, dazed from a late night of playing the last show in Sacramento, and then hanging out with too many fans afterwards. Empty beer cans and the latest Maxim magazines are strewn about, along with various articles of men's clothing. It's a rule that the guys never bring girls back to the bus, so it's a man's paradise inside the dark interior. Slowly, the bunk curtains are pulled back, and the band members emerge and deliberately try to keep from bumping into each other as they dress. Kurt, the driver, returns with steaming cups of strong coffee from a local coffee shop. "Ah, my man, Kurt, you saved the day," said Dreamer, the lead guitarist. "Did you see Kitty out there anywhere?" Being the only married member of the band had its advantages when it came to having someone to pick you up and take care of you after a long trip. Vince and McGuire sneered at the mention of Kitty, but secretly each one wished they'd had their own special someone to meet and welcome them home. Rather than acknowledge this, they both looked at each other and agreed to meet later to go out on the town. "She's not here yet," said Kurt. "Take your time." He knew full well that Kitty was always late to meet the bus on the way back. As much as she loved and trusted Dreamer, she was always anxious to meet him after one of these trips. She knew he loved her dearly, but there were so many girls who wanted to do just the same and more. She didn't want to drive up one day and see that look in his eyes, the look that meant he had betrayed her. So she took her time and prayed to the Lord to keep their marriage sacred and safe from outside influences. The last one out of the sleeping quarters was Rob. Dazed from the morning sun streaming in and stumbling about to get ready, he had forgotten to arrange a ride home. He grabbed a coffee and downed a large sip along with 2 aspirin. "My head is killing me," he said to no one in particular. "Well, look who's awake. It's Sleeping Beauty," said McGuire, ribbing Rob slightly with his elbow. "How'd you score last night?" Rob, who was not one to kiss and tell, turned to walk back to the bathroom at the back of the bus. As he entered the small space, he stood up against the wall and closed his eyes. He barely recalled the last few days. The last show in Sacramento had been sold out, and he had given his best performance yet. At least, he thought he had. His phone beeped, and he pulled it out of his pocket to see the notification from his calendar. Oh, great, he thought. He had almost forgotten. His first appointment with Jenny, the Reiki girl, was in 2 days. He needed to get sober before that. He pulled up his contact list and dialed Gwen in Portland. "Hey, it's me," he said into the phone. "Rob, is that you?" Gwen said. "It's so good to hear from you. Where are you?" "I just got back, but I was thinking of coming up for a few days. Is that okay?" he said hesitantly. If anything could sober him up, it was 2 days with Gwen and her family. Gwen had been trying to help Rob with his sobriety for years. Rob had met Gwen at his first Alcoholics Anonymous meeting 10 years ago when his drinking first got out of control. At 22 years old, he realized he had gotten off track. His dream of becoming a famous singer was crashing, and he was desperate to sober up at the urging of Dreamer and Kitty, who loved Rob like a member of their own family. "Of course, hon, come on up. Pete can meet you at the airport, and the twins will be so excited to see their Uncle Rob," Gwen said excitedly. "I can cook all your favorites. Oh, and bring some warm clothes. It's already getting cold up here," she said. "Thanks so much," Rob said, relieved that she hadn't turned him down. "I'll text you the flight info as soon as I have it." "Can't wait," Gwen said. "See you soon." Rob ended the call and dialed up his assistant Conrad. "Hey, it's me, buddy. Can you book me a flight to Portland? Leaving today and returning red-eye Thursday morning. I have an appointment at 2 that afternoon in Malibu." "Sure, Rob. How's everything? I saw a few updates from the road, and you didn't look too good." "Murray mentioned it to me, too," said Conrad, clearly concerned about Rob's well-being. He knew how quickly the star could spiral downward. "Everything's fine, man. I'm going to go see Gwen and her family for a few days. That'll set me straight," Rob said, not wanting to let on how badly he needed this trip. Okay, I'm counting on you, man. Remember, the fall tour is coming up fast, and you need to be at your best. Just keep that in mind, okay? Thanks. I appreciate the concern. Tell Murray that I'm fine, and I'll call Steele to get me to the airport. He can be here pretty quickly. Just text me the flight info, Rob said, wanting to end this call. He didn't like to acknowledge what everyone else was thinking about him. He would be fine. I'll get on it right now, said Conrad. Keep in touch, he said, hanging up. As Rob dialed Steele, he felt a calm peace come over him. Somehow, he felt that his life was about to change in a big way. He couldn't pin down how or when, but he just knew something was coming. Steele, hey, hi, buddy, I need a favor. I got to get to LAX sometime today. I'm waiting for Conrad to text me the flight info. Can you pick me up? Steele, who had been sleeping in that morning, didn't want to get out of bed yet, but he would for his mate. Sure, man, let me get dressed. I'll be there in 30 minutes. We can grab breakfast before you leave. Thanks. I owe you again. It seems I've got a pattern going, Rob said, laughing lightly. He realized this was more true than he let on. Finishing up in the bathroom, he reemerged to the sound of laughter and joking. It seems Vince and McGuire had bet Dreamer that he couldn't balance his guitar on his head, and Dreamer had taken them up on it. Heck, he wasn't about to pass up the $5 if he won. He and Kitty were saving to help build a school in India. Part of their giving back for all the success of the band was to give a part of their income away to charitable causes. They had been approached at a fundraising party by a well-known healer who didn't accept payment for her work. They had been attending her healing events for years and believed in her cause to help wayward children in India receive a good education, so they had dedicated 10% of all their family's income to assist. 5, 4, 3, 2, 1. They chanted as the Gibson Flying V guitar balanced precariously on his head. At the count of 0, he pulled the guitar down and grabbed the fives from Vincent McGuire's hands before they changed their mind. Will you guys ever grow up? Rob said, laughing. He was used to this type of behavior, but liked to think he was somehow above it. Come on, man. Must you be so serious all the time? Live a little, said McGuire. Oh, you don't have to worry about that, said Rob, walking past them and descending the bus steps out into the bright morning LA light. He had forgotten his shades and the hangover for a moment, but the brightness of the morning sun brought him back to reality, and he ducked into the shadow of the bus to wait for Steele. His text message alert sounded, and he saw that Conrad had found a flight out to Portland at 2:30 that afternoon. It would give him plenty of time to pack a bag and get to the airport without being too rushed. He always appreciated Conrad's attention to detail. He would land just before 4 p.m. and then be whisked off for a few days of apple juice, pancakes, and devotional prayer. His primary goal was to get back on track before this girl Jenny saw him on Thursday. In no time, the yellow Lamborghini pulled up next to the bus. Steele unfolded himself out of the driver's seat and stood to look at Rob. What happened to you, mate? He said with concern. You look like you've got run over by a Mack truck. More like several bottles of vintage cognac, Rob said, holding his hand up to block the sun that was coming up over the top of the In-N-Out. She must have been something else, Rob said, referring to the provider of the vintage cognac that had messed up his buddy. You bet. Twins was all Rob was going to say about last night's hot girls and the antics backstage at the Swirly Girl Club's private room. I almost wish I had been there, Rob said, imagining the scene. How much time do we have? He said, asking about the flight plans. As long as we're there by 1, I'm good, said Rob. Can we get out of here? We've got plenty of time, mate. Let's get some food and coffee into you, Steele said, working himself back into the Lamborghini. Rob went inside the bus to throw some things into his overnight bag and emerged a few minutes later after filling the guys in about his whereabouts for the next few days. Ready to roll, Rob said, as a vintage white convertible Cadillac with the top down pulled up in front of them. Hey, Kitty, Rob waved to her as Steele peeled out from the parking lot. She shook her head as she looked at her makeup in the rear view of the huge Caddy. She hadn't seen Dreamer in 4 days, and she wanted to look her best. She had seen one of Vince's Instagram posts last night tagged @SwirlyGirlsTopless, and she wasn't sure what to expect as she boarded the bus. She just needed to look into Dreamer's eyes. After a hot breakfast and a pot of strong coffee, Rob was beginning to feel like himself again. "I really feel like there's a big change coming for me," Rob said to Steele. "Maybe it's this new program I'm starting on Thursday, but I definitely feel like I'm going to make a turn for the better." "That's great. I'm glad to hear it, man," said Steele as they made their way to the airport. The traffic was backed up as usual, and Rob turned on the radio in the car, and they inched through traffic to the sound of vintage metal music. The flight was uneventful, and Rob made his way off the plane, but not before feeling a hand slip into the pocket of his leather jacket as he passed by the flight crew. Getting past the gate, he reached in and pulled out the business card of Wendy Worthington. On the back, in purple pen covered in lipstick, it said, "Call me." Rob was used to this sort of thing. Being known in the music world and voted one of the 10 hottest singers of 2017 by Maxim magazine, he got all sorts of attention, wanted and unwanted. He wasn't sure about this one and dropped the card into the trash bin as he made his way to meet Gwen's husband, Pete. After all, he was here to revive and recover before Thursday, and somehow hot girls always led to drinking, and he didn't want to take a chance. What he hadn't thought of is why the two always went together. The drinking and the girls. Pete was waiting at the baggage claim area outside of Gate 4 with a sign that jokingly read, "Strom's Limo Service." He knew that would get a laugh out of Rob, who he knew didn't just show up here for social visits. He was pretty clear about the relationship that Rob and Gwen had with each other when he met her 8 years ago. As part of her AA rehab, she vowed never to get involved with a fellow member, and she had stayed true to that vow. She loved Rob like a brother and did everything in her power to help him see that he was worthy and powerful in his ability to beat his drinking. She knew of Rob's past and how he had pretty much raised himself. She wanted nothing more than to see him happy, sober, and settle down with a good woman. As the Strom limo, otherwise known as the Toyota Sienna minivan, got closer to the house, Rob got slightly nervous. He hadn't seen Gwen in over a year, and he knew he didn't look well from a weekend of all-nighters and binge drinking. He was hoping she wouldn't be too hard on him. It was right about this time he would reach for a shot of something strong and soothing to his ego, but since he didn't have that, he sipped on a Gatorade he had bought at the airport gift shop and gritted his teeth. He knew he would be too busy entertaining Gwen's 8-year-old twins, Sam and Ellie, and responding to Gwen's inquiries about his love life and sobriety, or lack thereof. Pete parked the van in the driveway and offered to carry Rob's bag. Rob followed Pete to the door and readied himself for the onslaught of hugs and squeals from the kids. The door opened and he smelled the aroma of a home-cooked meal and saw a fire in the fireplace. He relaxed into it, knowing this was more like any home he had ever had growing up. He envied Gwen and Pete and their life together, but he didn't think twice about anything like this for himself. He was going to be alone for a long time, he thought to himself. He was never going to let some girl get the upper hand on him. He wasn't falling in love with anyone, just to have them leave him again. No way in hell. "Kids, there's someone here to see you," Gwen said as she heard the front door open. "Who is it, Mommy?" Ellie said, appearing from the room she shared with Sam. Sam, who was playing in the living room, got up to go towards the kitchen. From the kitchen, she heard them both scream, "Uncle Rob!" Amidst squealing and laughter, she came out of the kitchen to see a tall, muscular, long-haired man who looked like Rob hugging Sam and Ellie. "Oh, Lord, what has he been doing?" she thought to herself. But she managed to mask her disappointment with a huge smile as she made her way to hug the man she felt was like a younger brother. "Rob, oh my goodness, it's been too long," Gwen said, as Rob pulled her into a warm embrace. Her nose was so sensitive to alcohol now that even a day's attempts at sobering up weren't enough to fool her. She knew he had been on a bender, and a pretty big one, by looking at the deep circles under his eyes. "Please come in. Make yourself at home. Dinner's almost ready, and we can talk tomorrow after you've had time to rest," she said. Pete led Rob into the guest bedroom. "Dinner's at 7, he said, as he shut the bedroom door quietly behind him. As the door closed, Rob lay back on the bed and closed his eyes. He drifted off into sleep and was soon awakened by a knock on the door. "Dinner's ready," Gwen's voice said on the other side as Rob was jolted awake. He sat up on the bed and realized he had been asleep for almost an hour. He really must need rest, he thought, oblivious to the beating he was putting on his body and mind when he was on tour. The pace couldn't be kept up indefinitely, but he liked it that way. Fast music and having a good time were some of the reasoning he used on himself when his body protested that it was tired. He just needed to keep going, higher, harder, and faster. What he didn't realize is there was another way, a way that would allow him to relax, have fun, and still have the things he wanted in life. What did he want in life? He stopped to realize he didn't really know the answer to that question. He opened the door and stepped into a quaint family scene. In addition to the warm fire and soft music, delicious smells were coming from the kitchen as Gwen emerged carrying a tray to the table. Upon setting it down, she turned to Rob and looked him up and down. "I'm worried about you," she said gently. "How are you, really?" "I'm as good as I can be," he said. "I know I need some help. That's why I came here first." "What do you mean first?" Gwen asked. "Let's talk more after dinner. I'm sure you're hungry." She called the family to the table, and Rob sat between Sam and Ellie, who made him laugh with their funny animal noises, moo moo, and giggles when one or the other would say something silly. Between bites of lasagna and garlic bread, Gwen and Pete talked about their day and looked lovingly at each other. Rob felt comfortable and not at the same time. He loved the feeling of family here, but he didn't believe it was possible for him. How could he have a family when he had never really been a part of a family himself? He couldn't reconcile it in his mind. Over dessert of peach cobbler, Pete asked Rob about the upcoming tour. Everyone knew the band was making it big, and it was fun to hear about the music and the places they would be going. Pete and Gwen hoped Rob would be discreet around the twins. "It's going to be amazing," Rob said. "We'll visit every state in the East Coast, and then hopefully in the spring we'll do the South and North, and maybe some dates in Canada. They're really starting to catch on to us there, too," he said proudly. And he was proud. After all, he had started this band 12 years ago at the age of 18, with nothing but a few original lyrics and a desperate need to make it big. He had met Dreamer at a club where Dreamer was sweeping up and bar-backing to pay for an engagement ring for Kitty. They clicked immediately, and Dreamer introduced him to Vince, the drummer, and then Raw Deal was formed. They had added McGuire as bassist a little bit later, and then started playing Battle of the Bands all over Southern California until they hit it big when a recording producer saw them play a show at the Whiskey A Go-Go in Hollywood. Rob was pulled out of reverie by Sam and Ellie, who wanted to play Legos with him. "You can play for a little bit," Gwen said, "but then Uncle Rob needs to rest." Rob shot her a thankful glance and got up to follow the twins into their playroom. Gwen and Pete could hear their laughter as Rob made funny-looking Lego people from various parts and pieces. "You know he needs to get help," Gwen said to Pete. "I know he's exhausted, so I'm trying to let him settle in early, but I want to spend some quality time with him tomorrow morning," she said. "He's only here for a few days, so I want to make the most of it." "I figured, so I took the day off," Pete said. "I'll take the kids somewhere fun, and you and Rob can catch up." "That's why I love you," Gwen said, standing up to kiss him as he pulled her close. The next morning, with the house empty, Rob and Gwen sat together over a steaming pot of coffee. "Why don't you tell me what's going on?" she asked with concern. "I don't like the looks of you right now. What have you been doing to yourself?" "Well, you know me," Rob said jokingly. "I like to push myself, but sometimes I get anxious about the past and the future. I have to be able to perform, and the drinking calms my anxiety. It lets me relax and be more of me. But I know what you're going to say," he said. "Well, you came to me," Gwen said gently. "I know you can do this one day at a time. You've got to find another way to deal with your anxiety and the thoughts that are haunting you. You said you had found someone you thought could help. Tell me more about that," Gwen said, leaning in. Rob proceeded to tell her about meeting Jade and getting an appointment with Jenny. "I know it sounds different," he said, referring to the alternative healing methods Jenny would be using. "But I really think she's on to something. I don't think Jade would have recommended it if she didn't think it would help," he said, thinking back to his conversation with Jade. At that, a warm feeling came over him as he cleared his throat. What's going on with this girl Jade? Said Gwen with a twinkle in her eye. It sounds like you really like her. Oh, we're just friends, Rob said. We're both not looking for that kind of relationship. She's the first girl in a long time, besides you, Gwen, that I felt I could open my heart to. I really clicked with her on that level. Is she single? Gwen asked. Maybe this is a sign, Rob. You meet a nice girl, and then she turns you on to some cool new therapy. Maybe it's all meant to be. Maybe, Rob said, picturing Jade sitting across from him, looking at him with her knowing hazel eyes. The rest of his stay included delicious meals, warm fires, play with the twins, and time to wind down. There was no alcohol in the house, so he didn't have to worry about the temptation. Was he tempted to go out and drink, he thought to himself? No, he felt safe, warm, and anxiety-free here. This was the precursor to all the healing he would ever need. Chapter 8. Tea and white light. It's Thursday morning, and Jenny's alarm went off way too early for her liking. She felt tired today for some reason, even though she had slept soundly all night. She went downstairs to start a tea kettle and stretched lightly on her yoga mat before doing some yin yoga, which felt right at the moment. She took her green tea outside onto the veranda and sat looking out over the ocean. She said some morning prayers, asking the Lord to help carry her through her day. Over a light breakfast of toast and fruit, she pulled out her laptop to prepare for the day. Just then her phone rang, and she picked it up to see Chandra's name come up on the screen. Hi, Chandra. Is everything okay? She said, answering the cell. Hi, Jenny. It's not about me today, although I could use some help with Sky, she said matter-of-factly. Sky Monroe had no qualms about telling Chandra his feelings for her. Ever since she had started at the Soul Step retreat, it had been no secret how he felt. Chandra, however, shied away from a romance with anyone that she couldn't get a good psychic read on, and Sky had made it very hard for him to get close to her. I keep my boundaries very protected, he had said last night after they met outside at the Soul Step infinity pool over drinks. Chandra had had a long day of readings and healing work, and she needed a shoulder. Sky, seeing this as an opportunity to get closer to her, had put away any defenses he had and decided to let her in. You know, a guy could get used to having you around like this, he said, moving in closer to her. So close that his cheek was almost touching hers. His arm draped lightly over the back of the settee they were sitting on. Just once I want people to appreciate me for me, not because I can read their aura or tell them about their past lives. I want someone to want me just as I am, she had said, letting the strawberry mojito take over. Well, you're in luck, Sky said, dropping his arm down to put it lightly on Chandra's shoulder. Have another mojito and let's dance a little, he said, using his other hand to start the outdoor stereo with the small remote laying on the table beside him. Chandra stood up, looking up square in the eyes. What are you up to? She said, not sure how to react to him at the moment. His deep green eyes urged her in closer, and she was swept away by mojitos and his strong arms around her as she succumbed to the soft rock music. Her hips met his, and they swayed together, making their own music. Then he was kissing her neck and nuzzling her cheek, and she couldn't stop herself as he lifted her up and carried her into his private bungalow. Jenny, I had the strangest dream last night about you, Chandra said into the receiver, still dazed by her evening with Sky. Remember how I said you were going to meet someone that would be a karmic challenge for you? Well, he's here in your energy field, meaning you've met him, or are about to, Chandra said. Okay, what does that mean? What am I supposed to do about it? Jenny said, confused. I just want you to protect yourself and be careful, Chandra said. These karmic relationship things can get volatile at times. Just make sure you're shielding your energy every day and pray that you are always surrounded by good energy and you should be fine, she said. Well, I did meet someone new the other day, Jenny was thinking about Logan. Could it be that? I'm not sure, but just be aware and let me know what happens in the next few days, Chandra said. Promise you'll call me tomorrow night. Okay, I will. I'm pretty busy today, but my schedule is open tomorrow. I'll talk to you then, Jenny said. Take care, Chandra said, hanging up. Jenny put the phone down and pulled up her calendar. She saw Rob's name come up for her 2 p.m. and a tingle went down her spine. Why did she always feel this way when his name came up, she thought to herself. Her phone rang again and she saw a number she didn't recognize. Hello, this is Jenny, she said, answering. Jenny, hi, this is Logan. How are you? Jenny relaxed at the sound of Logan's voice. Logan, hi, I'm doing great. How about you? She said tentatively. Wow, she couldn't believe he had called her. I was hoping we could get together this weekend, he said. Logan also couldn't believe that he had called Jenny. He'd gotten up that morning with thoughts to the freedom of the weekend away from the confines of his office space. As he was considering his options, the paper napkin piece with Jenny's phone number had fallen out of his planner, and he had decided to take a chance on calling her. Well, my weekend is free starting tomorrow afternoon, she said. I would love to get together. She couldn't believe she was saying it, but recalling his gentle eyes and the warm feeling she had when he got close to her, she decided to take a chance. That's perfect, Logan said, congratulating himself. It was just as his grandmother had told him when he was a teenager. Takota, you must see things the way you want them to be. Only then will you be able to live your dreams. Before he picked up the phone, he had envisioned himself and Jenny at the wolf sanctuary together, and now she had agreed to spend some time with him. Perfect, it's a surprise. Dress warmly. Where should I pick you up? He said brightly, as his spirit did feel brighter and lighter as he spoke to her. How about 3 p.m. at my house? I'll text you the address, she said with a flutter in her stomach. Okay, sounds good. I'll see you then, he said, smiling to himself. She hung up and realized she was feeling butterflies in her stomach for more than one reason. She was meeting with Rob Strom for the first time today, and now she had a date with Logan tomorrow. She felt like a change was in the air for a reason she couldn't yet understand. As the tea kettle whistled in the background, she rolled up her yoga mat and went inside. It was going to be a beautiful day, and she wanted plenty of time to prepare for her first client at 11:30. She poured tea into her favorite quirky cup collective mug and put a raisin bagel in the toaster. She removed its crisp perfection and spread a generous amount of vegan cream cheese and honey on top, eating outside by the pool. She reflected on the upcoming appointment with Rob and the karmic thing that Chandra had mentioned. Could it be Logan, she thought, with her heart in her chest? I don't want to get hurt again. I want to find pure love with someone who treats me like a queen. I'm worth it, she said to herself. She prayed to God to help her enter into these 2 new relationships with discernment, and just for good measure, she asked the angels to envelop her in their divine light, to keep her energy safe and protected. Just in case, she said out loud. No sooner had she uttered these words than her phone rang. Hello, she answered, quickly thinking it was Logan again. Hey, it's Rob Strom, the voice said on the other end of the line. Is this Jenny? Hi, Rob. Yes, it's Jenny. I thought it was someone else. She was excited and disappointed at the same time. Is everything okay, Rob? Yeah, I just wanted to let you know that I missed my plane back from Portland, so I may be a little late today. I'm still coming, though. Okay. Jenny hoped he was telling the truth. So often, clients got nervous before their first appointment and talked themselves out of treatment. She knew Rob really needed this session, and she was trying to be optimistic. I don't have anything later this afternoon. Could you come at 4 instead? She asked hopefully. I'm at the airport. It looks like they can get me on the 12 o'clock flight, so I should be good for 4. Yeah, that sounds good. I'll see you then. Yes, perfect. Do you have my address? She asked him gently. You better send it to me again, he said. My assistant was supposed to handle my appointments and keep me updated, but he took the day off today, so I'm working solo. Okay, I'll send it now and we'll see you at 4, she said. Let me know if anything changes. I'm really looking forward to our time together. As Rob hung up the phone, he took a deep breath. For some reason, he was more nervous than ever about this appointment. Something about Jenny's voice had his stomach in knots. Or was it the prospect of seeing Jade there, he wondered. He knew that Jenny and Jade lived at the same place. At the thought of Jade, his heart skipped a beat. The time passed quickly as Jenny saw several clients, and Rob boarded his flight and arrived at LAX. He needed a ride, but this appointment was his private business, and he didn't want some Uber driver posting about dropping off Rob Strom at Jade Monroe's estate. There would be too much publicity and rumors spread about on social media, so he decided to rent a car and drive himself. He had been sober for several days now, and driving would give him an excuse not to reach for a drink to settle his stomach. The shuttle dropped him at the rental lot, and the clerk at Hertz Dream Cars was a cute little number with short blonde hair and twinkling blue eyes who got perkier when she saw him walk up. "Well, hello, how can I help you today?" she said with a bounce in her voice. It didn't take much for Rob to see that she had sized him up and down and was pleased with the entire package. "I just needed a sedan today," he said, hoping that would be the end of the conversation. He needed to keep his mind on things, and to end up in the back seat of the rental with this girl didn't play into the picture. At least not tonight, he told himself. "Well, I've got something I think you'll like," she said, handing him the keys to a Mercedes AMG C-Class sedan. "Let's go outside and we can inspect the car," she said. "You first," he said, politely holding open the door. "No, after you," she said. It wasn't every day she got to watch one of the hottest musicians of the year walk in front of her in tight jeans. She bit her lip as he moved past her. Safely in the car, Rob entered Jenny's address in the onboard GPS. He realized he had plenty of time before his appointment, so he decided to pick up lunch and eat on the way. Tuning into Ozzy's Boneyard on Sirius satellite radio and pushing the volume way up, he needed to rock to relax. It was nearing 4 p.m. and no updates from Rob, so Jenny hoped for the best and began preparing for their session. She loved everything about her work, and it was especially important for her to create a sacred and safe space for each client session. She began by using a small bundle of white sage to clear the energy of the area. She lit the sage and waved the smoke all around her treatment room, singing a song about space clearing that her friend Jessie, the shaman, had taught her as she watched the smoke twirl and whirl around the sunlight coming in the windows. She loved her treatment space, as she could choose to open all the French doors and let the ocean breeze in when she first met with a client, and then close the doors and pull the shades to make the room dark and relaxed as she did the treatment part of the session. She put tea water in the kettle and settled down onto the large floor pillows to relax in preparation. Right before 4, the gate buzzer went off. She tapped the receiver and heard Rob's voice say, "It's Rob Strom for Jenny." "Yes, hi, Rob, it's me, Jenny. I'll buzz you in," she said, releasing the gate with the touch of a button on the remote. She heard the growl of a large engine winding down the drive and saw the black sedan pull up alongside her tiny car. Even though she had seen Rob on all the YouTube videos she had watched, she wasn't prepared for just how magnetic he was in person. She could understand now why Jade had wanted to get closer to him. He stepped out of the car as she walked over to him. She could always tell what was going on with a client just by looking in their eyes. But these eyes were shaded by dark aviator sunglasses. "Hi, I'm Jenny," she said, holding out her hand to shake his. His hand touched hers, and she jolted slightly. "It's great to meet you," Rob said softly. She expected more bravado in his voice, but only her gentleness and kindness there. "Let's go into my studio so we can talk," she said, gathering herself up. She needed to have all her wits about her to fully focus on him and his session. "I have hot tea for us." Rob entered the stillness of Jenny's studio, and a calm came over him. He somehow felt at home here, and as quickly he relaxed and sat down on the floor cushions. "I've never done anything like this before," he said to Jenny. "It's effortless," she said. "You just need to relax into it. The first appointment is getting to know more about you and what you would like to get out of our sessions together, and then I can determine how to help you best." She watched his reaction to that as she put tea into small Japanese teacups. She liked to do a tea ceremony at the beginning of a session with clients to help relax them. Building a camaraderie with her clients was very important to Jenny, as she felt that opened them up to do better work together. If the client was relaxed and confident in the healer's abilities, then their ability to be open and clear channels for healing was made more accessible. "We're going to start with some tea today," Jenny said. "This is a mild green tea with valerian to help relax you and make you more open to the healing energy that will come through in our session today," Jenny said, as she handed Rob a cup of tea and sat down beside him on the cushions. "Why are you here today? What motivated you to come in?" she asked him directly. Rob stopped for a moment to ponder the answer to this question. He knew he really needed help, but sometimes it was difficult to express that, to admit to himself that he was failing at his earlier vow to be healed and to stop doing the things that were ultimately hurting him. "I came at the advice of a friend, your friend," he said, looking her in the eye. "Jade really made an impression on me when we last met," he said, thinking fondly of the red-haired beauty who had lovingly guided him to Jenny. "I want to get better, I really do. I want to be the best that I can be, make the best music, uplift people, entertain, and most of all prove to myself that I really can do all that without the drinking," he said to her semi-confidently. She sat looking at him as she often did with her clients, hoping that the silence would become so uncomfortable and her gaze so empathic that it would cause them to open up even more to her. "Is that the only reason?" she said softly. Rob sat thinking for a moment as the tea started to take over and move him into an even more relaxed state. "I want to do this for me. I don't like myself like this," he said, looking away. "I don't feel good about myself, but right now it's the only way I know how to keep going. I put a lot of pressure on myself to succeed, and so does my manager. I'm in the public eye, and that makes it even more difficult. I just want to do good work and feel good doing it," Rob said, looking away from her. "That's what we needed to hear," she said quietly. "That's what will open the door to your healing. I'm going to do some energy clearing work on you now. Before we begin, I want you to lay back quietly on the cushions, and I'm going to use a small rattle to move around your body and clear away stagnant energy," she said, standing up. "It's always good to enter into a healing session clear from anything that might be hanging on to you from the outside world," she said as she picked up her rattle. With soft music in the background, she began to shake the rattle around and above his body in circular motions. She whistled softly as she shook the rattle around him. She could sense that his energy was beginning to clear, and the fogginess that surrounded him from having had so much alcohol in his system was beginning to lift. "How do you feel?" she said as she put the rattle down. "Really relaxed," he said, "like I haven't felt in a long time. I'm going to have you stand up now and move over to the treatment table while I'll explain what our treatment session is going to look like. You won't be passive. You'll be an active participant in the session, so I want you to be aware of everything that I'm going to be doing." She helped him up from the cushion and noticed the strength of him as he grabbed her hand. All sense of nervousness that she felt earlier was gone now, and she was letting the energy and helping spirits take the session open. She had Rob lie face up on the massage table and covered him with a light blanket. "Are you comfortable?" she asked. "Very," he said, relaxing into the moment. "I'm going to be using a combination of shamanic techniques along with Reiki. I won't need to touch you, but you will feel my hands moving above and around you," she said. As Jenny's hands moved above Rob's body, she invoked the sacred Reiki symbols, sending them energetically into his third eye and around his body. She could feel the tingle in her crown chakra and the heat moving through her hands. Often during a session, she would get intuitive hits as to the nature of the issue causing the problem. If she did, she asked the angels and helping spirits to move in and clear it, and made a mental note to discuss it with the client later. As her hands moved around Rob's body, she could feel the energy flowing. She felt him relax into it. Her hands didn't need to touch him at all. The healing power of Reiki angels and shamanic helping spirits working through her brought the energy down through her hands and in and around him. Rob lay quietly on the table, wondering what he had gotten himself into, but as soon as the Reiki energy surrounded him, he was instantly calm. He felt himself floating above the table and realized he was looking down at himself lying there. He panicked for a second, but a gentle calm took over and he fell into a light sleep. He saw himself talking baby words to a man that towered over him. "Dada," he heard himself say. "Why won't this kid shut up?" He heard the voice that he somehow knew to be his father. "Get him out of here. I don't want to have anything to do with him," his father said as he popped open a beer and drank it down in one long gulp. "Well, I can't handle him either," a voice that he instinctively knew to be his mother said as she appeared in front of him. "What are we going to do?" she said to the man. "I'll tell you what we're going to do. We're going to ditch him, and then we're going to go party and drink in all the pubs." Just as baby Rob heard these words, Rob came back into his body. A sweet energy surrounded his heart, and he heard a voice say, "Rob, you can slowly sit up now." Still dazed by the vision and lightheaded from the Reiki, Rob turned his head to Jenny. "What just happened to me?" he said. "Sit up and we can talk over some tea," she said gently. She knew that often clients had different experiences in each session, some frightening and others loving and gentle. She always liked to process with each client at the end of the session to help them reintegrate anything that came up. Rob stood slowly and moved back over to the floor pillows. "I saw my parents back when I was a baby. They wanted to get rid of me so they could go drinking," he said angrily as he proceeded to tell her everything about how his parents had abandoned him. Jenny sat transfixed by his words, but reminded herself not to get swallowed up in the story. She had to remain detached and objective, but compassionate and helpful at the same time. "A healer doesn't take on clients' pain," she heard Jesse saying during one of their shamanic healing sessions together. "You cannot, or you will drown in them." "What does this have to do with my drinking?" he said sadly. "Do you feel better than when you came in?" she asked. "I feel lighter, but I'm not sure how or why. Can you really help me, Jenny?" They sat for a while longer, and Jenny suggested that Rob take some time for himself today to meditate. He laughed out loud. "Do you realize what business I'm in? We don't meditate. We go non-stop. It's the business. That's what you do," he said. "Well, I strongly suggest it. I'll email you some more information," she said, rising. Rob stood, and they made arrangements for him to come in again in several weeks. "Take care, Rob," she said as she hugged him goodbye. As they stepped out of the studio onto the veranda, something caught Rob's eye. Up on the large balcony of the main house was a red-haired beauty looking out from the inside, body hidden behind the curtains. When she saw it was Rob with Jenny, Jade stepped out onto the balcony. Her hair blew in the salty breeze as she turned to look their way. Rob could see she was completely naked, and Jenny just giggled. Nothing intimidated Jade, and she waved happily. "Hi, you two," she said, shading her eyes from the sun with her hand. "I'll be right down. Let me put something on," she said as she dashed inside. "Don't leave, Rob," he heard her yell, but all he could think of was the sweet feeling he felt when he saw her entirely as she was. As they waited, Jenny apologized for Jade, but Rob was slightly amused by Jenny's demureness. "I've seen it all," he said. "There's no need to apologize for her. She's raw and open, and that's so rare these days." Jenny realized he was right, and she secretly hoped she could be more open in her sexuality like Jade. Inside the main house, Jade scrambled to find something suitable to throw on. Why did this man make her so... she couldn't think of the word for it, and then it came to her. Why did this man make her feel so utterly alive and free? She reminded herself that they were just friends, and settled on an orange sequined pool cover-up. She twisted her thick red hair up in a loose bun and dabbed on her new favorite intention perfume, Mystery Woman. Satisfied with herself, she made her way to the door. As she swung open the heavy carved wood door, she smiled in anticipation. Rob saw the front door opening, but he wasn't prepared for what he saw. Jade emerged laughing and smiling as she ran over to embrace him. He was transfixed and utterly speechless as he felt her body touch his. "Rob, it's so good to see you. How was the tour? How are you doing?" She had so much to say to him that she couldn't keep quiet. She was excited to see him again. Rob recovered from the shock of her body, pressed into his, and managed to regain her composure. "Jade, it's good to see you," he said in a husky voice. "Oh gosh," he thought, that sounded a little too turned on. He dialed it back a bit and gazed into her eyes. "Are you free for dinner tonight?" he heard himself saying. "I'd like to talk to you about something." "For you, anything," Jade heard herself saying, entirely forgetting that she had agreed to meet her mom for cocktails at the Ritz. "I'll pick you up at 8, he said as he kissed her cheek. "See you," Jade said breathlessly. Now Jenny, who had been standing in the midst of this exchange, felt the electric heat that had passed between Jade and Rob. She was no silent observer as she watched the exchange between the two. As Rob made his way to the car, Jenny turned to look at Jade, whose gaze was still on Rob's car as he made his way out of the estate. "What was that about?" Jenny said to Jade with a smile. What? Jade said, suddenly noticing Jenny in front of her. It's just Rob. We're going to dinner as friends, nothing more. We already established that in the beginning, Jade said, reminded of their first meeting at the party. That's not the way just friends greet each other. I felt an electric surge pass between you two. You may not realize it, or maybe you're not ready to realize it yet, but there's definitely something there, Jenny said. Whatever, Jade said jokingly. Are you sure you're not jealous? She said as she pulled off the orange cover-up and dove naked into the pool. There, that cooled her off all over, she thought, as she saw Rob's face fade away with the splash of the blue water.